Welcome to Some Good Medicine. I'm going to talk about four things today: the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, trials in Israel on the Pfizer vaccine, concerns about infertility, and ivermectin. So first, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We now have a third vaccine in the United States that's been approved for use for treatment and prevention of the coronavirus. So the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is an adenovirus vector, meaning it's got DNA that's put inside of a virus that has been made harmless to us, and that virus with the DNA is injected into our bodies. The virus directs itself into a cell. The cell takes up the virus. The virus delivers the DNA segment to our nucleus. And our nucleus, it doesn't become part of our gene. So those of you that have concerns about changing our genetic code, that just won't happen. The DNA goes into our nucleus, but the machinery of the nucleus takes that DNA and then makes RNA from it. The RNA goes out into the cytoplasm, and those messenger RNA now is just like the other mRNA vaccines, and it is transcribed into a spike protein. And so the actual immune response is very similar. The way it gets there, it's one more step in that it goes from DNA to messenger RNA and then to a protein. So the body then produces, our cells will produce a spike protein. That spike protein is recognized by our body as foreign, and we develop antibodies, T cells, B cells, and we develop an immune response without getting sick. The adenovirus can't replicate, so it does not continue to live in our bodies. The building blocks of that DNA, the nucleotides, are quickly broken down after it is made into messenger RNA. So none of those parts of the vaccine persist in our bodies. So how effective is it so far? Well, the initial trials that were presented by Johnson & Johnson to the United States FDA was done 8 days ago, at the end of February on a Saturday. They had an EUA, Emergency Use Authorization meeting. So the trials for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine were done in several different countries. The overall effectiveness was 66.1% at preventing moderate to severe disease after 28 days. Now, we heard 94, 95% for the mRNA vaccines. Um, there are some differences there. They were looking at a little bit different things, um, but I'll get to that in just a minute. So they were done in different countries. Now, Brazil has some of the highest mutation rate and has one of the more concerning mutations. They did studies in Brazil, and the numbers for Brazil were 68.1% effective and 72% in the United States for preventing, again, moderate to severe disease after day 28. The mRNA studies were done just about 14 days and beyond after the second vaccination was given. So there was a little different in the time span. So that accounts for some of the differences in the percentages that you see. But so 60, 72% in the United States was the effectiveness of preventing moderate to severe disease. Is that the only thing? Well, when you look at severe disease and hospitalizations and mortality, it did help quite a bit. So the effectiveness of the vaccine and doing what we really want it to do, which is prevent people from having severe disease and going to the hospital, was very effective. When you look at antibody tests, so this is another study that was released in the New England Journal of Medicine on January the 13th, and the same vaccine, when they looked at neutralizing antibodies after day 29, over 90% of the people that had the vaccine had neutralizing antibodies. After day 100, 100% of the people who received the vaccine had neutralizing antibodies. So we know that there's an antibody produced, and we know that it's a neutralizing antibody. Also, they looked at CD4 T cells and CD8 T cells, and those were also very good. So when you look on a cellular level, when you look at real life, this vaccine is also very effective at preventing severe disease. Now, with any vaccine, most vaccines for viruses, we know that we're not preventing 100% of disease. We want to make disease much less frequent, and we want to make it less severe. And that's what these vaccines do. Now, let's go on to the next study that I mentioned at the beginning, was a trial in Israel on the Pfizer vaccine. So this came out of the New England Journal of Medicine, 24th of February. So this is another real-world study to say, does this vaccine work? Now, in Israel, they've got a one-payer system, the government system for their health care. So they had big numbers on this, and they have all the records available to them. So they have a good study. So they actually enrolled 600,000 people in both arms of the study, those who got the vaccine and those who were control had not gotten the vaccine yet. They have a goal of vaccinating all their citizens within, I think, the next month or two in Israel. So 600,000 people versus 600,000 people who didn't. So after the second dose of the mRNA, 92% less infection with the vaccine group. Severe disease, 92% less in the vaccine group. It's interesting that even just one dose was pretty effective. It decreased it by 57% symptomatic disease, just one dose. Hospitalizations were decreased by 74% with just one dose of the Pfizer mRNA vaccine. Death was after just one dose was decreased by 72% in the vaccinated group. So here we see another study done in the real world in big numbers. People are saying, I'm waiting until we see more numbers. I'm waiting until more people get this vaccination. It is happening. Millions of people are getting this vaccine every single day. So if you're on the fence, here's more information for you. It does prevent disease. So far, I don't think we're seeing any major side effects from it. You can hear stories and ask anybody who's gotten the vaccination. I'm sure you know somebody who has. And you'll hear stories about sore arms, some aches, pains, headaches, even fatigue, and maybe even a fever that lasted for a day. I would say most people in my experience are saying that they've had a sore arm and they went about their day. I understand there's a lot of people that didn't feel so good for a day or so, but those are the side effects so far, and there are quite a few of those. Ask your friends how they felt after getting the one of the mRNA vaccines. Okay, another question. So a lot of people, especially young people, are holding off on the vaccine because of concerns with infertility. How did this come up? As far as we know, there's not really a good mechanism for this vaccine to affect anybody's fertility. So how did this question come up? Here's how it came up. Two scientists in Germany. One was Wolfgang, I'm going to mess up the name, sorry, Wudarg, and Mike Yearden. They wrote a paper that asked the German government on December the 1st to stop all vaccine trials with the mRNA vaccines because of their concerns as scientists and as virologists in the field. They wrote a long paper. They wrote out several different concerns about the vaccine, which are common concerns that a lot of people that don't support the vaccines have. So they wrote out this long paper. Amongst those was a concern for infertility. They didn't say that they'd seen infertility. They didn't say that it would cause infertility. They just questioned, could this cross-react with another protein? So when we develop antibodies, it's to the spike protein. They felt like there was a protein that's in the to develop a trophoblast, which becomes part of the placenta. So that protein is called syncytin. So syncytin 1 may have some similarities to the spike protein. The question is it similar enough to the spike protein that antibodies to spike protein would also cross-react with syncytin? And that was their question. Valid question. You can have cross-reactivities from one antibody to another antibody. So sometimes you develop an antibody that's supposed to fight a virus, but then it cross-reacts and reacts with some of your own cells, and that's cross-reactivity, and it can cause an autoimmune problem. Well, valid question. The answer, it doesn't. The structure of syncytin versus the structure of a spike protein is actually quite different. In the molecular world, they're quite a bit apart. There's no cross-reactivity. In looking at this in real life, has this happened? No. Of course, it's really early to see infertility at this point. But if this were a true thing, we would think that anybody who had this vaccine would have trouble with fertility. It just hasn't happened yet. So that may take more time. But really, to begin with, the similarities between the proteins just aren't there. There has not been, and even in labs, signs of cross-reactivity. And in real life, we have not seen any problems with infertility. So that's where it came from. That was released on December 2nd, and then the news media put it out on December December the 1st, and they wrote the paper, and December the 2nd, news media let it out and had stories everywhere about concerns about infertility. Even these guys who wrote the paper would say that they have not proven or seen problems with infertility. It was simply a concern. Okay, next, ivermectin. So ivermectin has been talked about from the very beginning. It's also talked about alongside with hydroxychloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine has been very little or no effect for treatment or prevention of SARS-CoV-2. Ivermectin has been touted among some of the same people. Some of the frontline doctors, the organization, have also put this out there. They put out a paper or a protocol called IMASK Plus, and that's a protocol for prevention. And I think they have another one with a different acronym that is also for treatment of SARS-CoV-2 infection. So I've seen these on the internet. I've seen this protocol that people have cut and pasted and put on their statuses in other places. And it is the frontline doctor's protocol for prevention, or it's the frontline their protocol for treatment of SARS-CoV-2. Amongst some of the therapies that are on that are vitamin D, zinc, azithromycin, hydroxychloroquine, and ivermectin. Right now, ivermectin is really their focus. So ivermectin is very interesting. In a test tube, there is some antiviral properties. And I think we've known that for quite a while. And that's why it has been studied. Believe me, there have been a lot of studies on ivermectin. Um, to date, there's just not good support to use it. In even when you look at the antiviral properties of ivermectin, to reach those antiviral properties in a test tube, you have to have very high concentrations of ivermectin. And to reach that in a human, in a real world setting, you have to get toxic doses of ivermectin to have the effect. But that's where it came from. In the test tube, there are some antiviral effects. It's not an antiviral. It's not specifically an antiviral. Um, Ivermectin is a medicine that we use to treat lice in humans. We use it to treat some parasites in the intestine, and we also use it in veterinary medicine. So what's happened recently is a lot of people have gone to their veterinarians or gone and ordered medicine from veterinary suppliers and taking extra large doses of ivermectin, and we've actually seen toxicities of people who are taking it. Don't take large doses of ivermectin. Don't take ivermectin when it's not prescribed for you. I have had people that have requested that I give them ivermectin as a preventative treatment for SARS-CoV-2 infection or as early treatment for SARS-CoV-2 infection. I can't do that because, one, it doesn't show in the evidence. I can't say that that's going to help. In fact, I see that there's signs that it could hurt. So me as a doctor, I have to look at that and not just look at, could this possibly? Yes, it's possible, but I have no good proof that it's going to help prevent or treat SARS-CoV-2. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration also agrees. They have an updated statement saying that ivermectin is not approved for use in SARS-CoV-2. So there's a lot of information flying out there. I want to give you some good information, some good medicine. I see studies and science, and I read those and I interpret those in the light of my own clinical practice. So I'm not just blindly reading studies. I am seeing how it plays out in the real world. I see how it plays out in my own patients. I also have seen it out over time, 25 years of medicine. I've seen things come and I've seen things go. So that's the perspective I have as I give you this information, and I hope this has been some good medicine for you.